Nobody other than OPEC is ripping off the United States like China. Nobody.
So what do we do?
OPEC is number one. China is number two. China is stealing all our jobs. We're rebuilding China. 15 years ago, China was like, forget it. It was so backward. Now China's going to replace us in 12 years or less as the great economic power of the world. If I would have told you that 2 years ago, 5 years ago, you would have said, it's crazy.
Their
I wouldn't have
economy
said
would still have to more than triple to
Excuse
take
me.
over ours.
They're making all our products. They're taking all our jobs. And then they loan the money back and we pay them interest. It's an amazing phenomenon. China is an abuser of the United States. China is not our friend.
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, we're going to take a look at the latest new Q post. And we have to ask the question, did Q just provide us with tangible evidence of the secret communications being pushed behind the scenes by the DNC operatives who were setting up President Trump for the Russia collusion hoax? They talk about having Rod Rosenstein under control, and they talk about teeing up a story against Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. So there is that, plus a whole lot more that you guys are going to want to stick around and check out. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Just Informed Talk. I'm your host, Craig. I like to say thank you at the beginning to everyone who's hit that subscribe button. If you guys have not done it, please come here, click the big red subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell for notifications so you get notified as soon as each one of these videos get posted. You got to click that bell and then hit the all button as well. So with that, we're going to look at the latest Q post. We're picking up right where we left off. We left off at Q post 3988, and we're picking up at Q post 3989, and we have a lot of posts to get into, and there's a lot of information. But first, I want to remind you this video is brought to you in part by Brave Browser. You can download it for free using the link in the description so they know that I sent you, and they'll make a contribution to this channel when you download it, install it, and run it on your computer. It's totally free, and it's a better internet browser, better than the one you're using because it blocks ads and has a whole bunch of other great features. So use the link to download it today for free. I know you guys are going to enjoy this product. Now, we're going to get into these latest posts. First, this is the post that Q's given us before of the American flags out on the front porches of these houses, these homes, I should say. And it's got the three little, I don't know what you call these, asterisks, stars, whatever you want to call it. But it has those there, and we know what that means. Usually the 3 stars represents Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who is a 3-star lieutenant general. And that is just something I think we're going to start with as being the starting point for this post. We got a lot to get through, so obviously this is pretty self-explanatory. It's a reference to General Michael Flynn, who Q has talked about in the last previous post in referring to his impending exoneration from the exculpatory evidence that exists, that seems to be a part of grand jury material in other cases that are ongoing. So that's something to keep in mind. We're going to talk about that in the next few posts here. The next thing Q wants us to look at is this FBI chain of command for the mid-year investigation, which of course is a reference to the mid-year exam, which was the Clinton investigation that was run by Comey's corrupt FBI and signed off on by the corrupt Hussein Department of Justice. And this is the chain of command for that investigation, and it shows we have James Comey at the top with Jim Rubicki, Andrew McCabe right beneath with Lisa Page acting as a special counsel, and then you had Michael Steinbach and John Glaucon and Bill Priestap, and of course Peter Strzok as one of the lead agents. But Peter Strzok also had a special job as a fusion between the FBI and the CIA, which is how you connect back to John Brennan. But we'll save that for later. So, getting into this flow chart, this chain of command chart, whatever you want to call it, Q wants us to look at it and say FBI chain of command, mid-year investigation, HRC email, FBI chain of command, FISA, Russia, POTUS, Flynn, Stone, Papadopoulos, Manafort, CIA, Bridge, Brennan, intelligence assess, 17 Ukrainian links, the 17 intelligence agencies that all agreed. Remember that? It's convenient to have a short memory, but we don't. It says FBI chain of command, DNC hack, CIA bridge, Ukraine CrowdStrike Brennan, reconcile. If chain of command plus DOJ CIA, foreign and domestic, both found guilty, indictment chapter 115 classified 1 through 99 regarding USAV 1, 2, 3, 6 regarding FISA, Can the same argument be made regarding the mid-year plus DNC plus plus plus? And I think that is basically referencing the fact that we're looking at the chain of command. All of those people involved were fired and removed from their positions for obviously participating in this, whatever you want to call it. I call it a coup. You can call it a mid-year exam and or a crossfire hurricane and or whatever you want to call it. It really doesn't matter. But it's talking about the other stuff that they can't even list, right? The classified 1 through 99, which is referring to so much. Think about that. That means it's classified information that ranges that big of a spectrum. And we've looked at that and examined what that spectrum is. And it goes from things like corruption and just regular white collar crime all the way up through human trafficking and the occult ritualism and ritual abuse and things like that, all the way into really demonic evil stuff, as we've investigated and found through multiple years of looking at this in detail. So Q's reminding us to connect all of these dots and remember that this is all linked, right? The whole Russia hoax going after President Trump is linked to the cover-up. It's linked to the way that they abused the FISA court to spy on the people around him and then use that information to set him up. And we're going to get into some even more interesting stuff later in this video where Q shows us probably the literal chat logs from these people's conversations that they thought were secret in their attempt to set up this coup against President Trump, this whole Russia hoax and other things. So we're going to talk about that. But it says, reference public optics, retired left refers to fired forced. And that's talking about the people who supposedly retired really were just fired and forced out. The Federal Bureau of quote-unquote investigation. Now remember that flow chart that we looked at just a minute ago for the chain of command. Well, what happened to all those people? James Comey, director, fired. Andrew McCabe, deputy director, fired. Jim Rubicki, chief of staff and senior counsel, fired. James Baker, general counsel, fired. Bill Priestap, director of counterintelligence, Strzok's boss, fired. Peter Strzok, deputy assistant director of counterintelligence, fired. Lisa Page, office of general counsel, fired. Mike Cortan, assistant director for public affairs, fired. Josh Campbell, special assistant to Comey, fired. Michael Steinbach, head of national security division, fired. John Glockalone, predecessor to Steinbach, head of national security division, fired. James Turgle, fired. Greg Bauer, fired. Tricia Anderson, fired. Randy Coleman, fired or removed. Q. So that's what happened to all these people. So just let that simmer for a second and put it in context of what we know now, right? And then Q gives us this graphic which shows us that same list of people, all of these people who were involved in this coup attempt against President Trump, allegedly, here are listed. And they're the ones who were removed from the offices which they were holding in the FBI. So, it's all a big coincidence, though. Don't, believe any of this. Please do your own research. But, it is what it is at this point. So the next one, Mueller designed to take in evidence needed to... Now, this is a little bit of review for us. A lot of you guys know all this stuff. But this is also for people who are newer to this to understand what we're up against and what happened and how we've gotten to where we are today. But it says Mueller designed to take in evidence needed to expose deep state. DOJ block regarding Mueller evidence ongoing investigation. Mueller designed to limit POTUS's ability to maneuver. Mueller designed to stall for time until mid-year elections to terminate all House Senate ongoing investigations. Mueller designed to safeguard Democrat base false narrative regarding Russia collusion. POTUS cheated, evil skies falling in effort to divide and mobilize for future protests, riots, threats, violence, false flags, etc. Mueller designed to provide fake news with ammunition to sway public opinion, obstruct foreign plus domestic agenda, fuel impeachment removal, fuel anti-POTUS division, prevent unity, etc. Mueller designed to demonstrate to foreign players that old guard still pull strings. Mueller designed to mobilize Democrat Party to vote or to midterm vote win. Mueller designed to push Democrat Party backers to donate GoFundMe Democrat Party. Mueller designed as public outcry excuse should criminal charges be brought against them. We are being politically attacked because Mueller. The news is fake. The war is real. Q. And that's something we've gone over here quite a few times on this channel. But to just summarize it, Mueller was the blockade that they needed to stall for time and to keep President Trump and his newly appointed heads of these different agencies and departments from doing their investigations and having access to the information, right? Because you lock it up and do an ongoing investigation where nobody can get to it. And just like with General Flynn and the exculpatory evidence that we're finding now, there was all this exculpatory evidence that showed President Trump was the victim of this coup attempt, yet the mainstream media did everything they could to cover it up. The DOJ and the FBI dragged their feet the whole way, and we're not even talking about the fact that there are other people involved in this, right? And we're talking about the DOJ, FBI that came from Obama into the Trump administration. Then as President Trump got his guys in there, we started seeing some progress in actually effectively, I think, moving forward with these investigations that are going to turn into the indictments, which will turn into the trials eventually. As I talked about here before, there seems to be a list of indictments that looks very similar to the things I'm hearing from my sources about what is coming, right? What will publicly come out soon. So I think that's why Q is giving us all this information, because some of this is review, but you're going to see we have new information Q's giving us that seems to be the actual chat logs from these, private game servers where they're having these conversations about setting up, Michael Flynn and President Trump. It is incredible. You got to stick around to see this, but we'll look at the next post here. It says, remember this important fact. Adam Schiff is part of the Gang of Eight intel. It will become critical once Gang of Eight material is declassified. Logical question. If Adam Schiff knew everything he's investigating and stating publicly to be knowingly false disinformation, why then would he take the course of actions ongoing? Did Adam Schiff purposely deceive the American people public, thinking the Gang of Eight material plus other classified documentation would never reach public domain? Adam Schiff memo false. If Adam Schiff was privy to Gang of Eight classified material, would he not know the same facts, truth as Nunes? Think Nunes memo versus Schiff knowingly. What if it was coordinated Q? So again, Q has been telling us this. This I think sounds very familiar. This might be a repeat, but it might be just reiterating the same set of facts here or speculative, questions and statements that Adam Schiff seems to have access to the same information that we see Devin Nunes telling us is connected to this coup against President Trump, connected to the cover-up and the blockade and the Mueller investigation, all of it, right? Yet at the same time, the cognitive dissonance of it all is you have the Democrats just repeating over and over again, there's nothing here, there's nothing to see, this is all fake, this is all just a figment of your imagination. Ignore the mountains of evidence and just focus on, these pop stars and the ice cream in my freezer. You know what I mean? Like, that's where we're at right now. So what if it was all coordinated? And where were they communicating? And who was involved in this? Those are the questions that we need answers to. And that's what I think Q's putting us on here. So the next post says, how does Soros communicate secure with DNC leaders? Q. Then Q asks, how does China communicate secure with DNC leaders? Q. So remember, if Q puts something in the kill box, metaphorical here, secure being in that means that it is obviously insecure and that it has been accessed and compromised by us, the good guys, the white hats, whatever you want to call it really. But ultimately, that's what's happening here. So you see it for yourself. Is China having backdoor communications with DNC leaders? Is there a faction inside of that party who's communicating with the Communist Party and saying, look, just wait President Trump out a few more months. We'll get this election. We'll get him out of office. Then Joe Biden will be there and you guys will basically own this country again, right? We know you have Hunter Biden basically and all that stuff. So don't worry. And they're saying this to not just China, but Iran and other countries too. And is this all part of a Soros plan as well to help protect the vast network that may or may not exist that involves human trafficking, human organ harvesting, some very prominent medical facilities, let's just say hospital groups and doctors, and we're going to talk about that too briefly later with Mike Pence's trip to the Mayo Clinic. But all this information has been out there since 2017, and maybe President Trump's putting a stop to a lot of this stuff. And maybe one of the things nobody's really covering is that when you have a pandemic, what happens to all these hospitals is they all empty out and people stop going there and they slow down. Just an interesting thing to consider at what kind of crimes you can cover up when the system is overwhelmed and considerably packed on a consistent basis. Whereas if you stop that, how you could identify things. I'm not going to get any further into that right now because that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But it goes on. Q says information warfare, infiltration instead of invasion. Silent war continues. Now, this time, the Anons do point out there's only one period, one dot. So there's been 5, there's been 4, there's been 3, there's been 2, now 1, as if it's a countdown. So that's something to consider as well. The next post here is this that Q wants us to look at from Q Post 3693, talking about the same evidence to free Flynn currently being used to indict others. Grand jury, the 302 mod 1 count, who listened in 2 count FISA, 6 counts FBI agent 1 page Flynn interview, or a P Peter, I'm not sure for the P, but it says if FISA warrant was illegal, if FISA warrant predicated on illegal uncorroborated evidence, if FISA actors purposely withheld exculpatory evidence from the court, watch what happens next. Q. Now this is from Monday of December 16, 2019, right? And just consider that though. This as we've talked about before, these crimes, if they were committed on this grand of a scale, could you imagine how long it just takes to build the cases, right? And then to have to launch all of those cases simultaneously, to have them all prepared to go at the exact same time because of what it shows us right here, what Q says. If the same evidence that could be used to free someone like General Flynn is involved in exposing and indicting individuals for this grand conspiracy against President Trump, it's probably going to be a RICO case with a lot of these people, it would seem, especially if the information we're about to look at that Q shared with us is true. So I'm only putting this out there so you guys can see it and make up your own minds. You know what I mean? And again, this is a weird one where Q doesn't sign the Q. So we see that happen sometimes, but I guess that's one example of it again. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. So remember when Q told us back in November 2019 about this Star Wars game? And we had talked about how, there was the Xbox Live outage, there was the PlayStation Network outage, and how these outages just happened to come right as Q was exposing the fact that one of the ways that these people communicate with one another is by logging on to these video games and using the in-game chat systems to basically set up these private communication relays. So this is an example of how they were communicating, how they thought they were communicating secretly with one another, when in reality, we've been watching it the entire time, which is a good thing, in my opinion, that the right people have this information and have actively been acting on it since it's, been revealed, let's just say, and that they did the outages to basically go clean up and to wipe all the history so that, thinking they were going to get rid of the evidence, when in reality, the NSA and other organizations, other agencies have it all, right? So here's the link to the game itself. Q said, how do you select bad actors attempt comms without signals intelligence collection, rebellion or empire, private invite-only factions, dark to light? Q. Wow. So then Q gives us this one, the link to this transmissions page where it talks about the closure of the Star Wars Commander game. Now, another thing that I thought was interesting was the somebody pointed out here, Shady Groove, shout out, hat tip to him, was pointing this out, sharing it, that the Silent War Continues matches up perfectly with the Star Wars Commander, which was the name of this game, SWC. And we're going to see why that's important going forward, because you can't even make this stuff up. The guys it seems like Q's giving us a transcript of these deep state guys, talking about how they were going to set up this story to go after Michael Flynn, and how they knew that the Mueller thing was coming, but they're literally playing as the Empire. So, I mean, and that's just one of the topical things that I looked at and was like, these people are, when Q says these people are stupid, he's not lying. These people are really dumb, it seems. But that is something I thought was interesting, and then it, basically told us about everything we need to know about this game. And I guess the point was that they shut down this game on March 13, 2020. Very, very recently. We'll remember that. That's going to come up again. Here we have Twitter support, Q in the next post, pointing us to Twitter support, where Twitter support says, and don't forget the references to Star Wars made by James Comey, where, remember this New York Times article where he basically, talks about some weird stuff and has all these Star Wars, toys in the picture. And people were like, doing a lot of research on that back then. And then Q connected the dots there. And now we're connecting the dots again on that. So I just thought it's good to bring that up again. Here's Twitter support, though. This is the tweet I was looking for, where it says, we're having some trouble delivering DMs right now. You may be getting DM notifications, but not seeing the messages that were sent. As soon as this is fixed, we'll let you know. I wonder what that means. It seems that there may be some panic going on because Q is continuing to blow the lid on all of this. But it says all walls are falling down. Q. Well, we'll have to wait and see what that one turns into. But the next one here is this article that Q points us to from this niche gamer website saying billionaire George Soros invests $45 million into Activision Blizzard. Okay, well, the billionaire investor and philanthropist has invested $45 million in Activision Blizzard, and this is an article that was posted on March 10th of 2020. So 3 days later, the Star Wars Commander game is ended after George Soros takes a $45 million stake in Activision Blizzard. Now, I'm not sure that the two games are connected, but let's see what Q has to say about that. Says the dates are important. Says the Star Wars Command drop December 16th to closure. Coincidence? Soros invests February 14th. Blizzard? Coincidence? Desperate times call for desperate measures. When, why do you expose what you know publicly? Q. So when and why is they have it all, right? They want to see them. It's basically moves and counter moves. They're telling them, exposing their hand and saying, look, we know about this communication. So what does George Soros do? He goes in and buys it up so that then probably he can conveniently control the information that may or may not exist on those servers of these private, supposedly private, I guess, conversations between these people who are trying to set up President Trump and this country, right? Acting in their capacity as deep state swamp creatures, if you will. So the next one here is important. Q wants us to look at this picture, or this, this plan from Henry Kissinger. And I think we've talked about this on the channel here before, but here's a quote from Henry Kissinger. Today, Americans would be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore order. Tomorrow, they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told there was an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. It is then that all peoples of the world will pledge with world leaders to deliver them from this evil. The one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by their world government. This is Henry Kissinger at a Bilderberg meeting in France in 1992. So they've known how to do this for a long time. And if they have been planning it, this is how the plan would be unfolding. A global pandemic that makes all of our countries collapse so that we collapse into this global order that conveniently is run by a bunch of old royal aristocrats in Europe and communist Chinese in Asia. And basically, America just won't exist anymore, because that was the plan. That was the plan for this country. We should just be thanking God every day that President Trump came along, that we have men and women in the military who are fighting this, that we have men and women in Congress, we have men and women in all different facets. You guys out there watching this, sharing this information, the fact that we all stood up against this just in time, it just makes me know that God is involved in this. God is on our side, and we are going to prevail over it. But I just will get to the post here. It says the New York City mayor's Twitter. Let's see what it has to say. My message to the Jewish community and all communities is this simple. The time for warnings has passed. I have instructed the NYPD to proceed immediately to summons or even arrest those who gather in large groups. This is about stopping the disease and saving lives, period. So obviously Q wants us to look at this, and Q says, why do they want you locked inside? Why do they want you to panic? Why do they want you to live in fear? Why is the media banning anyone who challenges the COVID-19 narrative? This has everything to do with the presidential election. Who benefits the most? Logical thinking, all assets deployed, win by any means necessary, Q. So we've talked about this. If this were a bioattack meant to affect the presidential election's outcome, it's working, right? They have everyone locked in their houses, glued to their TV, hoping that they can someday be able to leave when almighty Chris Cuomo gives them the go-ahead. That's the point we've come to as a society. Nobody probably, even a few months ago, would say this is possible, yet here we are today. And ladies and gentlemen, it seems like it's only getting worse unless we stand up against it, but we have to do it in a smart way that is safe, obviously. So, look, we have a very long road ahead of us, and we got a lot of work to do. So the next one here is an Anon giving us this graphic, I think, or actually it's Q, excuse me, who gives us this graphic, which pulls it all together, right? But it pulls together the information the Anons were pointing out and showing us, which is that these in-game chat malfunctions, where the chat was being disabled, line up perfectly with events that have, let's just say, different interpretations by some out there. It shows that these chats being disabled lines up with things like the Capitol Gazette shooting, and also the 2018 Toronto shooting, and also the student who was wounded in a shooting at Florida High School, and this was on April 20th of 2018. Now, Q told us in the past how to select bad actors, attempt comms without signals, intelligence, rebellion, or empire, private, invite only, factions, dark first light, and of course says, and then it connects it with the other post where Q asks how do Soros connect with the DNC, and how does China connect with the DNC? So obviously there's a lot more to be dug into here, and we're going to get into that in later episodes, but this right now is what we're getting as we initially look at this. Q says, Anons, impressive, most impressive. Why would in-game chat be disabled during false flag events? Q, or I don't know why, but I do know Q's pointing to it and saying it's important to look at this. Now, the next one here, and Anon says, just like you, they go silent during ops. So Q points to this. Interesting. And then Q gives us this chat log. Now, what is this chat log? Well, it's pretty big if it's true. But it seems that in one of these Star Wars games, Q has gotten this chat log that has all of these different people in it. Severus, Jules, Roger, Huck, Dooku, and all of these people are having a conversation. Now, mind you, this is supposedly a conversation which I can only put together as probably from May 17th of 2017. And it's saying Rod Rosenstein isn't taking you know what, and he knows our friends have stuff on him. Well, that's interesting. Doku responds, I'm hearing Mueller may be by the end of this week. Now, we know May 18th, 2017 was the day after this chat took place, and that's when Mueller or Rod Rosenstein announced the appointment of Mueller as the special counsel. So that's interesting that Q gave us this. Hearing that too from this Severus guy or person, White House will be blindsided. Let's put Michael Flynn, I think that's what that says, back in the news. Can have Steele or Strzok, not sure what the S is yet, maybe Strzok, Peter Strzok, draw up memo on Turkey with Erdogan thugs beating protesters in streets. It fits news cycle, and I'm sure we'll need a few more memos down the road. Good practice. So if this is people, and I'm not sure who Severus, Huck, Roger, Doku, all these people are, but let's assume that they might be individuals who are involved in coordinating this coup of President Trump, this Russia hoax, the Mueller blockade, then they're here talking about this in this supposedly private chat room where they're planning things. And then there's so much more to glean out of this that Anons are still deciphering right now as we speak. But it says, I'm in S. You in here? Struck maybe. Our friends in New York still have secure connections set up waiting. Mike Flynn was mentioned in company group 2. Now, company is usually a term used to refer to the CIA. It says evidently their work on the Limey is paying off. Now, Limey is sort of a pejorative used for British people, and a lot of people have speculated that the Limey is referencing either Steele, Christopher Steele, or Theresa May. That'll make sense when you hear the next few ones. Paying off how? Getting to them. That's talking about Mike Flynn. It says, yeah, he mentioned Limey in a call earlier this week, scared blankless. Now, another interesting thing here is that these guys are talking about listening in on calls, right? That's interesting. So he mentioned perhaps Christopher Steele or Theresa May, or Limey could just be a reference to Crossfire Hurricane and the whole operation. But that's something that's interesting here. And then it says he isn't the brightest bulb, which, yeah, this coming from the literal morons talking on a Star Wars game server and thinking that the NSA and all the other intelligence agencies and the military who've been watching them the whole time are watching this whole thing and laughing at you, you morons. But it says, but that project has worked perfectly. It really has. Huck, didn't AEWP mention it? Now, AEWP is apparently a reference to a Washington Post reporter, possibly. This is what seems to be the idea at this point. It says that AEWP may be this Adam Entos, who was a national security and foreign policy writer who covered the Pentagon, CIA, White House, and Congress at the Washington Post. We're still not sure about that yet. But it says not AE, but someone else there. Not sure who. I was listening in, but our carrier pigeon. I'm not sure what that means. That might mean their messenger, I guess, obviously, but who that is, I'm not sure. Said in debrief that they said something along the lines of, quote, no wonder no one in our business has called Limey out. What's the point when you all keep bringing us great stuff? It actually keeps our page views, or helps our page views when she gets all of her minions fired up with this dumb stuff first. Now, the quote for she is why some people think it's referring to Theresa May as being the Limey, but we're not sure right now. It says, that's effing amazing. Hey, all been watching in here with S, presumably Struck or Steele, at the GT outpost. I'm not sure what that is. All go from us. Huck will send memo to usual place. Do your magic. Roger, any update on Camp Eagle? Now, this is one I've been looking at all night trying to figure out. I'm not sure what Camp Eagle is a reference to yet, but usually these people are just using the first letter, so something with CE. Not sure. Asset en route. Don't expect much from it. He's been out far too long. Figures, okay, Huck, keep that connection open and expect something to come through pipeline a little later. So they're obviously talking about the fact that this is a place for them, a pipeline for them to get information to the Washington Post to write their fake news, right? If that's what this is, and if this is a real chat log, right? It says, just stall them. RM is happening tonight. Not sure what RM is, so they'll have plenty to cover. Or Robert Mueller, maybe. It says, tonight, F, quicker than I thought. Connection will remain open. Let me know if you want to tip on Robert Mueller. Just let it ride. And then you can't read this last one here, but it says, today, time is up. Everyone knows what to do. Tomorrow will be a busy day for all, so we'll let everyone know time when S hears from Grapevine. Yeah, okay. That's what we're up against, ladies and gentlemen. That's just a quick, cursory glance at it. A lot more digging is going to be happening in the next couple days and weeks. But Q says close, Q, so giving us this information is big. It's very big. Now, the next one here is this Donald Trump status that Q wants us to look at, where President Trump tells us in explicit terms, my campaign for president was conclusively spied on. Nothing like this has ever happened in American politics. A really bad situation. Treason means long jail sentences, and this was treason. So there is going to be justice. I know that we're not going to let this pass, and we just have to continue to persevere, and we will find justice, and we will overcome. And these people, they decided to pick a war and wage a battle against the American people, and they're not going to win. Mark my words on that. Now, finally, Q says, be ready, and then gives us this tweet in closing here, which is connecting some dots here. It's looking at this RR, Rod Rosenstein, and it's talking about the Mueller the Mueller may be coming by the end of the week through this chat log. Of course, it talks about the Turkish president's bodyguards who beat up U.S. protesters after he met with Trump. You guys remember that story. And then it connects it to May 18th, the day after, where Deputy U.S. Attorney General Rod Rosenstein appointed FBI Director Robert Mueller as the special counsel overseeing the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 campaign. So there you guys go. That puts it all together and puts it all into context for you. And I figured I'd just go ahead and just wrap it up there, since that was a lot of information. And we're going to go ahead and just do a few more things before we sign off. I want to make sure you guys know, watch these videos, share them on your social media, leave your thoughts, theories, and insights below. I want to hear what you guys have to think about all this. Great ways you can connect. Find me on Twitter at justinformu or at informed_news. Or you can come to justinformednews.com, the official website, bitchute.com/justinformedtalk. And there's Patreon if you want to make a monthly donation and keep this channel alive. They've demonetized it. They've done everything they can to put it out of business. And without your support, I couldn't do it. So your support keeps this channel going. And also, I have a GoFundMe set up. If you want to make a one-time or anonymous donation, links to everything will be in the description below the video. Before we go, we do a segment at the end of each one of these episodes called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. And today I want to share just a simple verse out of Psalm 37. And it talks about instructions and wisdom. And we're going to read verses 1 through 11. Do not be agitated by evildoers. Do not envy those who do wrong, for they wither quickly like grass and wilt like tender green plants. Trust in the Lord and do what is good. Dwell in the land and live securely. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you your heart's desires. Commit your ways to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act, making your righteousness shine like the dawn, your justice like the noonday. Be silent before the Lord, and wait expectantly for him. Do not be agitated by one who prospers in his ways, by the man who carries out evil plans. Refrain from anger and give up your rage. Do not be agitated. It can only bring harm. For evildoers will be destroyed, but those who put their hope in the Lord will inherit the land. A little while, and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for him, he will not be there. But the humble will inherit the land and will enjoy abundant prosperity. And that is the instruction in the wisdom of God, right? And understanding that our job is to commit our ways to the Lord and trust in him and let him act in our lives, and he will help make the righteousness that we live with shine, right? So if we live a righteous life, if we do the right thing, if we put our faith in Christ, if we do unto others as we want unto ourselves, and we live by examples, God will make that shine like the dawn and the noonday. So remember, no matter what evil exists in this world, God will help you shine if you live with righteousness, integrity, and helping others and live a Christ-like life. So that's my message to you. Take it, share it with your family, friends, and loved ones, but that's where I'm going to go ahead and leave it. Remember to hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Hit it, punch it, tap it, headbutt it, whatever. Hit the like button if you guys like this content and want to see me make more. That's going to be it for me. Thanks for watching Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.